Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a look at a really interesting perspective on Polish affairs. Quite timely, too.
Yeah, we've got these excerpts from Krzysztof Jackowski's YouTube channel, JASNOWIDZ Krzysztof Jackowski Official.
Right, specifically from a video called Wielki, Konflikt, Europy, Polską, Wizja Live. A big title.
And the context is, well, it's pretty crucial. This was recorded just 3 days before an election, back on a Wednesday night.
So you're getting predictions, observations, right as things are heating up for this vote.
Exactly. A real snapshot.
Okay, so our aim today is basically to unpack the main arguments, the core predictions from this video.
Give you the distilled version, without you needing to see through the whole thing.
Perfect. So let's kick things off. First big topic, this prediction of political conflict.
Yeah, this is central. The commentary suggests the current government is heading for some, well, significant conflict.
Even uses the phrase silent coup.
Right, which sounds dramatic, but it seems to point towards a coalition party
Right.
potentially betraying the government after the election.
Causing destabilization, maybe?
That's the idea. Post-election coalition splits aren't exactly unheard of in multi-party systems. We see it sometimes.
Italy comes to mind, perhaps. Shifting alliances there often lead to instability.
Good example. It's that kind of dynamic.
But there's a condition here, isn't there? This conflict is less likely if the coalition's own presidential candidate wins.
That's the specific nuance, yeah. If their candidate wins, their position is stronger, supposedly making internal betrayal less probable. It bolsters their dominance.
Okay. But the commentary itself, recorded before the results, already feels this tension.
Oh, absolutely. The title alone, Major Conflict Between Europe and Poland, kind of sets that stage. It hints at friction, maybe similar to what we've seen with Hungary's political direction, perhaps.
Right, so it's not necessarily saying policies will flip entirely, but more about the political group itself fracturing.
Exactly. The speaker specifically flags the possibility that at least one party in the coalition might be, thinking about betrayal, or even actively trying it.
And this idea that the current calm won't last.
Yeah, the speaker explicitly says that. Expect turbulence after the election. That feeling of impending conflict really comes through.
Okay, interesting. Let's pivot then. The commentary also focuses quite a bit on one figure, Grzegorz Braun.
Ah, yes, Braun.
It sounds like initially he was maybe dismissed, seen as a troublemaker or even a laughingstock by opponents.
That seems to be the initial perception described. For listeners who might not know him well, Braun is known for his nationalist, often controversial Eurosceptic positions.
He's been in the Polish
Yes.
parliament, right?
Yes, and he's quite vocal on sovereignty, the EU, history. His style is definitely, well, direct, provocative, some would say.
Okay, so given that background, the commentary predicts a major shift in how he's viewed after this election.
A really dramatic one.
Yeah.
The prediction is that basically all parties, especially the big ones, will start to fear Braun.
Fear him. That's a strong word. Why? What's driving this predicted change?
Well, the argument is about his future influence. The speaker believes that, kind of regardless of how Braun does in this specific election, he's setting himself up to lead a party that could do really well in future parliamentary elections. It's a longer game.
And the speaker even had a photo of Braun there during the recording.
Yeah, apparently. Which really highlights how much attention is being paid to his potential impact.
So what's his platform? What is it about his message that's expected to resonate so much and, well, cause this fear?
A big part of it, according to the commentary, is his strong opposition to the European Green Deal.
Which is a big deal in Poland, given the reliance on coal and economic concerns.
Exactly. So he's positioning himself against these EU policies, framing them as harmful. That taps into a certain vein of public opinion.
And healthcare, too. The speaker mentioned that.
Absolutely. Braun is expected to really go after other parties, accusing them of deliberately damaging the healthcare system. Again, playing on very real public concerns about access and quality.
So his running for president now? It's more strategic, not necessarily about winning this race.
That's the interpretation, yes. It's seen as a way to build his image firm, patriotic leader, laying the groundwork, basically, for his party later on.
Okay, now there's this comparison made to Andrzej Lepper's Samobrona party, but with a difference.
Right. The comparison suggests, the potential for a populist movement tapping into dissatisfaction.
Like Samobrona did.
Yes. But the key difference highlighted is the base. Samobrono was heavily rooted in the agricultural sector,
Right.
maybe less defined politically beyond protest.
Whereas Braun.
Braun's movement is seen as drawing from a broader patriotic base, potentially more strategically coherent, maybe more resilient long-term.
Interesting point about patriotism. The commentary notes it might be overused in media, but still sees Braun having real potential to build something big around it.
Yet, despite any perceived overuse, the potential is seen as strong.
Which leads to this prediction of a major political shakeup down the line.
Exactly. If Braun's strength grows as predicted, it could really shift the balance of power in future elections. A very dynamic political landscape potentially ahead.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit now. Away from the direct political predictions and more towards some broader societal issues the commentary brings up. Specifically, healthcare and ZUS, the social insurance institution.
Right, there's a lot of dissatisfaction expressed here. ZUS, for context, is the body managing Social Security, pensions, healthcare contributions.
And the speaker questions why, despite people paying significant amounts into ZUS, healthcare doesn't seem much better than, decades ago.
Yeah, there's this strong sense of frustration. Where's the money going? Why aren't services improving more noticeably after all this time? It's a sentiment you hear in other post-communist countries, too, this struggle with reforming big public systems.
And the commentary points to the rise of private healthcare as a result.
Exactly. It suggests that if you want timely tests or treatment, you often end up having to go private, unless it's an emergency or one of those specific limited programs.
Which makes you wonder what the mandatory insurance is actually covering for everyday needs.
Precisely.
Dentistry is used as a key example.
Yes. The fact that there are so many expensive private dental clinics, it highlights the cost of what should be, arguably, essential care.
And the direct question is posed, why isn't there more free dental care publicly available given the insurance contributions?
It really underscores that perceived gap between payments and services.
The speaker calls it hypocrisy, doesn't he? This idea of free healthcare.
Pretty much. The argument is, if you still have to pay out of pocket for basic tests and care, can you really call the system free? It kind of undermines the whole principle.
And this critique extends to politicians generally, across the spectrum.
Yeah, there's this sort of bewilderment. You have articulate, seemingly capable politicians left and right, yet these fundamental problems persist.
Like the tax-free amount that's mentioned as an example of something promised but not really changing.
Exactly. It's cited as evidence of a wider failure to deliver, tangible improvements despite promises.
And a reminder that politicians are managing our money, taxpayer money.
That's a crucial point emphasized. It's not their personal wealth. It's public funds derived from taxes and contributions, which implies a duty of accountability, right?
Definitely. The commentary then looks specifically at ZUS itself, portrays it as, well, maybe not very helpful. Bureaucratic.
That's the picture painted. An imposing institution that collects money efficiently, but isn't always seen as user-friendly or supportive in return.
And the fairness of the mandatory payments is questioned, especially for the self-employed.
Yes, this is a sharp point. Why should ZUS demand payment if a self-employed person earns literally nothing in a month?
That sounds incredibly tough.
It highlights the strain. If you have no income for months, you still owe ZUS unless you actually suspend or close your business entirely. It feels, well, unfair to many.
The speaker also mentions a lack of sort of collective citizen action on these things.
Yeah, an interesting point on civic engagement. The idea is that maybe people aren't organized enough to push back effectively.
Like, why aren't residents filing class action lawsuits against ZUS over, say, long waits for kids' dental care?
That's the kind of example given. It suggests a lack of coordinated pressure from the public.
And the argument follows that without that pressure, why would the government or ZUS change on their own?
Pretty much. If the basic services aren't guaranteed despite the payments, where's the incentive for reform? The speaker even suggests the current system, with its reliance on private care, kind of benefits doctors and the government via taxes.
Which leads to a pretty bleak question about trust, doesn't it? How long can people keep believing promises to fix these things?
Exactly. There's a sense of eroding public trust, skepticism about whether meaningful change is possible within the current setup.
And the commentary wraps this part up by saying these ZU healthcare issues are just, symptoms of broader problems.
Right. They're presented as one example among many challenges the country faces.
Ending on a rather pessimistic note.
Very much so. The feeling conveyed is that significant improvement seems unlikely without some kind of major shift, maybe even, as the speaker puts it, divine intervention.
Wow.
There's this feeling of resignation, that the system's just too resistant to change. And it mentions returning to a live format with audience interaction next time, suggesting a need for more direct discussion.
Okay, so just to recap this deep dive, we've looked at these predictions. Potential political conflict post-election, maybe even a silent coup.
Uh-huh. Then the anticipated rise of Grzegorz Braun, his anti-Green Deal, patriotic platform, and the fear he might instill in other parties.
And finally, this deep critique of the healthcare system and ZUS, the gap between contributions and perceived services, and the general lack of faith in political solutions.
It's a pretty critical snapshot of the mood and potential shifts in Poland right before that election. Raises some big questions about where things are headed.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Considering the commentary's emphasis on citizen disorganization and the slow pace of change on issues like healthcare, what's one concrete action you think could genuinely start a positive shift in one of these areas? Something small, maybe, or something big. Just something to ponder.